Multicultural Affairs, and I will be introducing our guest speaker for tonight. So to begin, we're really excited to announce this year that we're hosting the first ever DACA Awareness Week at the University of Idaho. So DACA, or Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is an immigration policy that was announced on June 15th, 2012 by the Secretary of Homeland Security under the Obama administration. Eligible individuals who came to the United States as children may request deferred action on their immigration status for a period of 2 years, and this is subject to renewal. One big misconception with DACA is that it's a path to citizenship. Unfortunately, at this time, this does not provide a path to citizenship. This is a very important topic for a number of reasons. Not only has DACA been challenged as a policy at the federal level, but it's also a policy that has a direct impact on our communities and the students we serve here at the university. This week presents an opportunity to develop a stronger understanding of immigration policies and reform, and better understand how communities can work together to support comprehensive immigration reform. With that, I'm excited to welcome Rosseli Guerrero. Rosseli is the Advocacy Fellow at the ACLU of Idaho. She has been working with the organization since 2019 and has gained firsthand experience with grassroots community organizing and legislative advocacy. Rosseli is a DACA recipient, and her passion for immigrant rights is what led her to become involved in activism work. She is also a first-generation college student working on double majoring in communication and criminal justice. Rosseli takes the saying "Ponte las pilas" to heart and is determined to graduate college and to continue working on creating an inclusive and safe state for all Idahoans. So with that, please help me in welcoming Rosseli tonight. And as a quick note too, before we begin the presentation, please at any point in the program tonight, feel welcome to put questions in the chat box. Rosseli will present, and then we'll move on to a questions and answer period. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here. Hi, everyone. So my name is Rosseli Guerrero. I am a DACA recipient and also the ACLU of Idaho's Advocacy Fellow. So a little bit about me. So I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. My parents are from Nayarit, Mexico. So I have this saying that I'm always like, ni soy de aquí ni de allá, because it's just like, I was born in Guadalajara, but I never really grew up there. I immigrated here with my parents when I was 5 years old. And, you know, for me, I didn't really quite realize my situation or that I was undocumented till high school. So as Corinne was saying, you know, DACA really helped a lot of people. It was, excuse me, I lost track of what I was saying. So DACA really helped me a lot, especially during high school. So during high school is when I finally realized that I was undocumented, right? It wasn't something that I thought about growing up. But when high school hit, lots of people usually think about prom or they think about football games. And high school time for me was, realizing the fact that I wasn't here legally, that I didn't have any papers. And that definitely took a mental and emotional toll on me, because as my friends were getting their driver's license, they were taking driver's ed, and I couldn't do that. They were getting a job and I couldn't do that either. And I was just like, well, they would ask me like, why are you not taking driver's ed with us? Like, when are you getting your license? Now we just kind of brush it off and be like, I like people, driving me around. But the case was, that wasn't the case, obviously. I couldn't obtain a driver's license. So then finally, DACA came to place. With the Obama administration, they brought the DACA program. So as Karen was mentioning, DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So this program is for children of immigrants, right, that came here as kids. And with this program, there was a lot of hope, because, in high school, I was like, well, I'm planning, like, my dream since I was little, I was like, I want to go to college. Like, that is just like the goal, right? And then when I was just realizing like my situation, I was like, well, what's the point? Like, what's the point of going to college? What's the point of even like, doing good, being a straight A student, if I'm not going to be able to do anything with that degree? I'm not going to be able to get a job because I don't have papers. So when DACA came, I was just like, okay, like now I can just like do all of these things. I can get my driver's license. I can get a work permit. I can actually, the job options were expanded for me because I was able to get that work permit. So for those of you that don't know about DACA, and just kind of like what what you get if you're a DACA recipient, there's a lot of misconception of oh, like there's a pathway to citizenship, and there's not. There is no pathway to citizenship at all. What we get as DACA recipients, when you get when you get approved for DACA, you get um, your work permit, you get a social, and you're able to obtain a driver's license. Um, but this work permit is only good for 2 years, and every 2 years you have to renew it. So you have to go through all the process, fill out the application, and the application, the filing fee, like I mentioned, is $495. But there is a lot of people that go to an attorney or get legal help to fill out that paperwork. And right now, there's usually attorneys, I'm thinking just here in Idaho, charge around $500 just to, and that's just renewal. I'm not talking about when it's your first time getting DACA, because that's definitely like a bigger fee. But just for a renewal, it's around $500 that they're charging. So that is around $1,000 that you're paying. And lots of people don't have that, especially college students. I know sometimes, I struggle to get that 495, and thankfully now I have, I take pictures of every time that I send my paperwork. That way I can renew it for myself and save myself those $500, right? Or whatever fee the attorney might charge for that renewal. So thanks to DACA, I've been, as soon as I got my work permit, that first week I applied for a job. I got a job, and I started, I think, the second week after my work permit. So it definitely felt really good just to be like, hey, I have that protection. I can do something. I can do something. I can be someone here in the US. But of course, DACA has a lot of flaws. And as we saw last year, and we saw the last 4 years with Trump administration, DACA has been under attack. They have been wanting to not only raise the fees for the program, but also just end the program. And the last 4 years in general was definitely really tough for myself, and I know all for my undocumented community, but also for my documented community, not knowing what was going to happen with our situation. I mean, we had already sent our paperwork, like they knew, like I knew like where we were. We already had, people already had our address, all of our information. So not knowing what was going to happen to us, not knowing if we were going to get deported, if we were going to get a knock on the door. And that's the reality for many of us. Personally, for me, I don't go every day thinking about like my situation that I'm documented. It does hit at times, just randomly. It just hits that I'm like, oh my gosh, what if DACA ends? And it's tough. But I think for me, most of the time it's just thinking about my parents, thinking about, my family, my relatives that don't have that privilege per se of having being in that safety blanket of the DACA program. There's a lot of people that don't have don't have that protection, and it's a really sad situation, thinking about my family or, my parents driving somewhere and then all of a sudden getting pulled over, and then what's going to happen to them. Like if I was to get pulled over right now as a DACA recipient, nothing technically would happen to me because I have paperwork that will show that I can be here legally, right? But not everybody has that. So for me, growing up, it was definitely hard to talk about my situation. I think there was only probably around like one or two people that knew I was here undocumented, right? And I just didn't want to talk to anybody about it because I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel at times safe to even talk about it. And it was definitely frustrating, especially in high school or just growing up, and just hearing like everything that was going on, people talking about illegal, right? Illegal immigrants. And me being like, well, a person can't be illegal. A person can't, drugs can be illegal, but a person can be illegal. And just kind of feeling like, the narrative that has been pushed out was just something that um, many people thought of undocumented folks, and feeling like people were going to judge me or be rude to me because of it. And it wasn't until finally when I got DACA that I felt more safe in a sense to talk about my situation and to really speak out, because I was like, well, I can't stay quiet about this. I can't stay quiet when I hear people having the wrong uh, information about what DACA is, or what immigrants are doing, or the benefits that we get. With DACA, lots of people are like, well, they're getting all of this stuff for free. They're able to go to college, for free. We're paying everything. And the thing is, that's not true. For DACA recipients, we're not able to apply for FAFSA. When I was going to college, when I applied for college, I remember, like my whole years of high school, just doing really well. And I'm like, I'm going to get all of the scholarships, right? I was just like really excited. I was like, hey, I'm doing great in school. I'm like involved in like sports and clubs. Like in my mind, I was like a really great student that would get all of the scholarships. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Um, there's a lot of scholarships that, one, are just for US citizens. Uh, and two, when you're trying to at least get some like funds or some grants, or what is it called? Or get some student loans, right? You're not allowed to, you can't. I remember going to Boise State, sorry, sorry everyone here, vandals, but applying for Boise State and me talking to my advisor and being like, hey, is there any help or anything that I can uh, anything that I can apply for to help me pay for college. And them mentioning like, well, there's not really anything, like we can't really, there's not really help for you. You can apply for FAFSA. And also the I guess like the only help that I could get was just to go to a bank and try to get a student loan from there, which obviously it was way more expensive to do it that way. So I just decided to pay my way through college, which meant not being a full-time student many times, taking semesters off to be able to pay for it, um, and just trying to navigate myself through it. And just that pressure as well. I feel like as a DACA recipient, that pressure of just like thinking like, okay, I'm a DACA recipient and I just need to be perfect. Like that mentality of being perfect, because you can't let your people down, but also you can't let society say like, oh, we told you so. DACA recipients or undocumented people are this way. Um, so there's that added pressure, which is it's a really stupid pressure to have too, because I mean, we're all humans, we're all gonna make mistakes. But I think also just for myself, just turning all of that pressure and all of that, expectations as well into just something positive, and like that being my motivation to really do good in school, to try getting good jobs, and just really moving forward, not really thinking of all of the of the what ifs, and just trying to prove people wrong, right? I wanted to do things for myself, and really do all of the accomplishments on my own as well, and not feeling that added pressure. So I started speaking out a little bit more about my story about being documented, right? Like I had mentioned, once I received my work permit, and I felt like more confident, like, okay, I'm good here. Uh, but with sharing my story, of course, there's a lot of people, you become a target. And I want to share with you a little bit. So I did a couple of news news stories, and got interviewed to talk about my situation about DACA. Um, and let me see. So I don't know if you guys can see this. Oh, it's loading. Here it goes. So this were some. So when I did an interview to talk about my documented story, this right here on the left, this, and it's a longer message, but this was a message I received from someone. I don't know them. I guess they apparently know me since, uh, but they decided to wake up one morning and send me this really rude comment, really rude message that was probably a few paragraphs long. Um, and the first time that I saw that, this was when I was finally being like talking about my story, right? First time that I saw that, I cried. And, I feel a little bit embarrassed to say that, but at the same time, I realized that, those feelings are valid. And that was my way to just, you know, deal with the situation at that moment. It was upsetting because there's a lot of misinformation here, right? Um, Especially right here. Mexicans coming into our country as freeloaders, which, if that's definitely not the situation, people are coming here for a better life. They are not eligible for a lot of stuff that we take that people think we get. We're not able to qualify for that. But most of all, it was just the fact that it's just like there's people like that, right? There's people that will always, regardless of how many times you present them with facts, like you can make a spreadsheet with all of this information, but they will still have all of this misinformation. They will already have, you know, they will already think that they know you based on what your status is or who you are. Um, so later on, that hurt obviously, but I was like, well, there's a lot of people that really want to share their story and share their truth, but because of people like this, they don't anymore because they don't want to see these messages. It's really overwhelming. But I was like, I don't want to be silenced. I've been silenced for too long, and it just wouldn't be fair for myself or for my community to stay silent through all of the injustices that I keep seeing with our immigrant community. Um, Later on, and I'll talk a little bit more about the butterfly project, but this was a message after I did that project here in Idaho. Someone decided to send me this message, and they're like, "You are a moth, no butterflies here." Which by that time I was feeling more confident. I was just letting, um, things just go and not really taking all of that negative energy. Um, I just find it funny. I'm like, well, a moth is still technically a butterfly, so I'll take it. um, but for a lot of people, and that's why it is scary, when people are sharing their story, especially for our undocumented community, because one, I mean, if you share your story, it'll go around. And what does that mean? That is like a risk you're taking, because that can also mean it gets in the wrong hands, right? And you can get deported. So talking about your story, I think stories are just the most powerful tool. They hold so much truth in a story, and I think it's important for people to share them and change that narrative that many times we see in the media or that people might have. I feel like it's really easy for me to be here and be like, let me tell you about all the statistics about DACA. But I think there's more power in just being like, hey, like, this is my DACA story. Let me tell you about it. Let me tell you how I'm feeling. And I know, UFI, there might be some DACA recipients that are there. And during the Trump era, it was scary. I mean, for me, it was scary. And just having that support, right? I think it's just so important. And, there's many people that are not talking about their story because, of that fear. And I think everyone should talk about their story if they feel comfortable, of course, right? But I think also thinking about how maybe, maybe it reaches someone that might be like, yeah, we don't want dreamers here. And your story might reach someone and they might be like, oh, okay, wow, okay, that makes sense. And we might have them be an ally. I think people don't realize that documented people come in like all shades and colors. We're coming from all over, and we're also your doctors, your teachers, your neighbor. So I think, people believe a DACA or an undocumented person looks a specific way, but you might not realize that the person sitting next to you in class might be a DACA recipient. And I think it's really important to also think about what you are saying when people are making comments like, oh, illegal people and, criminals, or, any of that, just think that the person sitting next to you might be going through a situation that might be going through a lot as well. Um, Thankfully, and this is something that I always share with like the people around me, um, the support system, right? When I was in high school, I didn't have that. And it also could be because I wasn't very vocal. I wasn't very vocal about my situation. So nobody knew what was going on. But now that I have been able to just be more free and talk about my story, just the support of community, especially when DACA is under attack and we don't know what's going to happen, just having people reach out is such a huge difference. And it's just like, okay, I have a community behind me. Regardless of like what politics are saying, regardless of what the president might be saying, I have a community behind me. And for those of you that are listening, that might be DACA recipients yourself, finding yourself that support group is just so important, to, you know, just in general, just having that space to really freely talk about these things. Um, like I was mentioning before, though, like with DACA, there is no pathway to citizenship at all. There is no way for us to um, get citizenship. Like there's no pathway to citizenship. Um, and I think now with like everything going on with a new president and everything, um, thinking about hope. I think like when we hear about the Dream Act, we hear about all of this, I think there's just like that word of hope that always crosses my mind, and how there might be, we might get papers, we might get feel that weight that has been in our shoulders for so long, it might be going away. So another thing I though is just that for me, obviously, it's a good, it feels good to be able to, um, that there might be a way for citizenship with this new administration. But I also know that that's not the only, there's more. There's more that can be done, especially for my parents, for our grandparents, for our tios and tias. It's important for us to find something that can, an immigration reform for all. Um, but also to think about making this more secure, making the DACA recipients more secure, making this permanent, not having us being in a, trying to balance our life, thinking of whether we're going to be uh, getting deported or not. Also, the fact that as a DACA recipient, I'm not able to travel. We're not able to travel unless we apply for advanced parole. So advanced parole is, it's this form that you can fill out, and you are only able to travel outside of the US with this special permission that, if I am correct, I think it's just like 2 weeks that you're able to go out, and it's only for an emergency. um, but it is an extra fee, and they do require you all of this paperwork. um, so lots of us, like for myself, since I was 5, I haven't gone back to Mexico, and I had my grandparents pass away and I wasn't able to be there. So it's definitely hard, to feel that way, to feel that you just um, don't have that ability to just fly back and forth. And I feel like with a citizenship or with some legal reform, I will be able to do more than what the DACA program has had and I benefited from. Um, Also, I think when we think about like the American dream, right? I feel like when our parents immigrated here, and came here, like el sueño americano was something like a big concept, right? That our parents had to bring us to the States. And personally, for me, I feel like the American dream for uh, daughters and sons of our immigrant community is a little bit different, because I know that with my parents, the American dream was coming here for a better life for their kids, right? That was their dream. And I know that I know when I talk to my parents and I'm just like, they look at the news and they're like, oh, les van a dar papeles, like they're gonna give you guys papers, and just how excited they are. And I'm just like, well, yeah, I was like, that's really cool. I'm really excited too, but that doesn't mean you guys are gonna get papers. Like it doesn't, like that's not for you guys either. And they're like, no, that's okay. Like we don't care. Like as long as you're good, That's all that matters. We just want you to be good, to have a good future. And I think just how selfless, our parents are, and how like the American dream for them was just giving us a better life, giving us a better future here in the States. And how, with us, if the Dream Act passes, how knowing their kids will have a good future, I feel like that's them accomplishing their American dream. But for me, it means just having, an immigration reform for my parents as well. My mom recently, 2 years ago, her dad passed away. And she, after what, like 20 years, I believe. Yeah, I'm 25. So after 20 years not being able to see or hold her dad, and the fact that she wasn't able to say her last goodbyes, that that's that just hits. That's just really sad. And that's the reality for many communities, for our immigrant community. So what can you do? What can you do to to really help our immigrant community? Like, how are you getting involved? And I think that's something, if there's any staff here, like U of I staff or professors, like what are you doing to like help your students? If you know that there's a DACA student in your class, like what are you doing to just like check up on them? Because I know that with me, uh, there's a lot of teachers that knew my situation. There, I didn't talk to my friends or anything, but there were some teachers that I confided with and talked to them about my situation, and them just like acknowledging, when things were getting rough, like my professors, when all of the DACA stuff was going on, sending that email of like support just meant so much and made me feel like, okay, I belong here. Like they want me here. Uh, and there were some professors that obviously had very not so nice comments to make during class. And it was just like not feeling safe, not necessarily not feeling safe, but feeling like, okay, well, I'm in your class and you're talking all of this horrible stuff. So why, so do you not want me in your class? So I think it's just so important for people to really, for professors and just staff to really check up on your DACA recipients and making them feel welcome. But for students as well, just, you know, there's been classmates that have made really rude comments and talking. I remember sitting in a class and a student talking about, yeah, all of this immigrants just not paying taxes. And me sitting in class knowing that we do pay taxes, which is a huge misconception that many times people try to push. That way they're like, yeah, immigrants, they're stealing our jobs and they don't pay taxes. That's the biggest misconception there is. Um, I don't have a number. I should have had a number here, but there is, statistics out there showing how we do contribute. We are a big part of this economy, especially during the pandemic. Our immigrant community was able to hold it down for all of America. Simple as that. We are essential workers, and unfortunately, we are not being treated as essential workers. We are not getting any benefits. Immigrants are not getting stimulus checks, but yet they're providing food for all of America. They're working regardless of the pandemic. They have been working nonstop to make sure that there is food on our tables. And for people to still think that immigrants shouldn't be here in this country, for people to think that they don't deserve a pathway to citizenship, still blows my mind. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that I oftentimes see people talking about, the sob story. Like, oh yeah, like I feel like many times people are waiting for that sob story. Like, I was just having a really rough life. And, you know, you don't need a sob story. You don't need to be provided a sob story to realize that someone's value is not determined by their legal status. You don't need a sob story to realize that these are humans. They deserve rights. They deserve to be valued, and regardless of their legal status. Um, so I just wanted to share a little bit about like ways for people to just get involved as well. So right now, I am working on a project called the Butterfly Migration Project, and this is for this is a project that we're going to be launched. We launched today actually, to really push Congress. to pass the Citizenship Act of 2021, which is a really progressive bill that will give a pathway to citizenship to 11 million undocumented individuals. And I think I've seen a lot of people, especially now, I've seen a lot of people on my Facebook groups that sometimes say, "Oh, I don't do politics. Like that's not my thing." And I think it's important to realize like the privilege that saying that has. I don't do politics because politics are pretty much, determining lots of people's lives. They are really determining the, whether people are going to be separated or not. So I think, politics really shape our everyday life, and especially for undocumented community. It plays a big role. Lots of people think that you need to be involved nationally, right? Like what can you do on a national level? But I also want you to think about what can you do on a local level. If you really want to advocate and be an ally for our immigrant community, what are you doing? What are you doing right now to really advocate for them? And it's not just when things are trending, right? Because my life is trending all the time. My situation is trending all the time for me. So what are you doing? What are you acting? What are you actively doing to really advocate for your immigrant community? And that can be literally calling out your family members, calling out your racist family members, checking them when they talk about something that's not true. Um, supporting nonprofits that are helping out the undocumented community, but also supporting. There's a lot of times that people put like funds for people to be able to renew their DACA. The biggest thing is also being involved in local politics. So recently, there was a bill that was introduced this year. It was called the driver's privilege card. With this bill passing, it would have given people, undocumented people, the ability to be able to obtain a driver's license here in Idaho. So, if you're undocumented here in the States, you're not allowed to get a driver's license. So this would have benefited so many people, especially just having, I know for myself, having that driver's license, having that document with me when I'm driving, and there's just a peace of mind, right? Unfortunately, it didn't pass. No surprise there, unfortunately, too. Um, just seeing how our legislators are. But it is a great step forward. And it's just like, how are you getting involved in that? How are you reaching out to your legislators to let them know that they should pass this piece of legislation? How are you getting involved in the local rallies or marches? And right now with the pandemic, obviously that's not happening, right? But I think it's just really helpful to just actively be doing this, actively be advocating, not just when it's the right time or convenient. And something as simple as just reaching out to your friends, to your documented friends, to your undocumented friends, when there's just, just like a little, hi, how are you doing? Hope you're doing good. That goes a long way. But for those of you that really want to get involved too, I have this really great project that I want to talk to you a little bit about. It's called the Butterfly Project, like I was mentioning. Let me share it right here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Here it goes. Okay, so the Butterfly Migration Project. So this started last year. So during all of the attacks for DACA to our undocumented community, I was really trying to think of a way that we could really support them. I know that I work in downtown Boise, and it was not the best place to be at. There was a lot of like Trump rallies. There was a lot of Trump trucks driving around, and it just didn't feel like the most welcoming place to be at. So I was like, how can I really show support for our undocumented community that's like driving around, that are like walking around downtown. So that's how this project came to be. So a little bit of backstory. So we just had people write, facts about what DACA is, because I thought it was just really important to really get our facts straight about what the DACA program is. And words of support, right? I wanted people to be walking downtown and to see all of these words of support that that people had for them, to really feel like, hey, you know what? I have a community behind me. And it also had resources and just a brief explanation of what DACA is. This project, we had around 300 butterflies that were made, and it was all thanks to community. They later migrated to Twin Falls area, and now I know that you guys have them at your U of I campus, which is really amazing to see. But this time, we're wanting them to fly all the way to DC. So as a DACA recipient, I will feel so much better when my parents are able to, get their, have a pathway to citizenship as well. There's no point in me, having my documents and fearing that my parents can be deported and I can be separated from them at any time. So the the purpose of this project is to be able to fight for a pathway to citizenship for all. We're gonna, we're planning to visually demonstrate with paper butterflies the nationwide support that our immigrant community has. So we're gonna do this like huge visual demonstration in DC. And then later, we're gonna be handing the butterflies to Congress and to really urge them to pass the Citizenship Act of 2021. So how can you get involved? So we have so many ways for you to get involved. There's just, we thought about everything because we really want people to find what best works for them. So one of the ways that people can get involved is to create your own butterfly. To create your own paper butterfly, you can get creative, have a crafts night, or you can also print the butterfly template that we have included here. You can go to this link right here. We have a butterfly template that you can use. But on your butterfly, we are asking people to choose one of these prompts and just write a message about it. So either one, how will an immigration reform benefit you, your family, or community? Or two, what words of support would you like to give? What words of support would you like to share? I had a typo here. Would you like to share with the immigrant community? And also, please make sure to add your city and state because that way we'll know what congressperson to send it to. So that is one way. So for those that want to create your butterfly, you can always mail it to ACLU of Idaho. So this address right here, or you can also take it to a drop-off location. So I know that U of I has a drop-off locations where once you create your butterfly, you can just go and take it to the multicultural place on campus, and there'll be a basket there that you can put your butterflies, and then later they will send it to us. So the last day to send your butterflies will be April 12th. So just make sure if you're planning to be involved, and I'm hoping you get involved, that this is the day that you're looking at. Option two, so you can also create a butterfly and just email us a picture. Make sure that when you take a picture of it, though, you really like put it on focus and it's like close up because we will be printing it out and then, cutting it out and everything. So just be mindful of that. So you can email it to me. This is my email address, and just on the subject, just put butterfly project. And of course, we have an option three. I know that right now with the pandemic, things are crazy. I know it's school and everything. So if you are unable to make a butterfly, we can create one for you. So if you just go to this site right here, there's a form that you can fill out. You can fill it out for your roommates, for your family. Each butterfly represents support for an immigration reform. So we'll just make one for you. You just have to put the message that you want included, and our volunteers will be able to create that with the message you have included on the form. And of course, please share your butterflies on social media. Use the hashtag butterfly project and tag ACLU of Idaho as well. That way we can share the butterflies that you are making. And if you are in a sorority, fraternity, if you're a professor, like if this is something that you want to do, like anybody can get involved in this project. Like I mentioned, this is a nationwide movement that we're trying to build up. We're reaching out to different states and different organizations. So I think it's just, we gave you so many options for you to be able to get involved. So no excuses. And like I mentioned, this is this is a way to just really urge Congress. The Citizenship Act of 2021, it's kind of on hold right now. But from the last time that I checked on like what was happening with it, they're planning to resume and start talking about it around May. So, we really want to get the word out there and just really show nationwide support, like I mentioned, about the importance of this. So, with that being said, you can always email me. My email is, I'll put it on the chat as well, if you have any questions or just um, other ways that you want to get involved in. And also, this also can count as a community service, community project that you're doing. So I also want to throw that out there. Um, and with that being said, I'll pass it back to Corin. Corin.
Yes, thank you, Rosseli, for sharing your story and giving us your time today. So now I'd like to introduce Monica Carrillo, who is a U of I student and who will also be leading the moderating session for the questions and answers period. Definitely, please, if you have any questions at any point, anything you'd like to kind of see engaged with tonight, please be sure to go and put those in the chat.
Hi all, I'm Monica Carrillo. I'm currently a junior at the University of Idaho, and I'm also a DACA recipient. So I'm incredibly excited to be here to speak to Rosseli and hear her story and more about the Butterfly Migration Project. In the meantime, while you all send in your questions, I wanted to ask my own. Obviously, DACA is always up in the air. It's kind of like, is it gonna stay? Is it gonna go? What's happening? Is DACA even a thing? But in the last week, the American Dream and Promise Act was passed in the House, and I just wanted to know kind of like what your thoughts were on what was to come next for this act.
Yeah, so obviously I was really excited that it passed the House. Like my phone was blowing up of everyone just like showing support, and it was really exciting to just see, because the Dream Act has been something that people have been working on, like grassroots organizers have been working on for like a long time. So for it to be getting that momentum and to actually pass the House was really exciting. Now it has to pass the Senate, but I think there's a lot of hope, right? But I also want to say that this is a great step forward. It is, and I'm really excited for us. But we want an immigration reform. We want it we want that 2021 Citizenship Act, because not everyone qualifies to be, to be a DACA recipient. There's so many requirements, so not everyone qualifies for that. So there's a lot of people that are left out from that, from that bill.
I totally agree. Do you know like what people will be left out? Is it like people that with criminal records or?
Yeah, so I mean, with DACA, if you have a felony, you're not allowed to qualify for DACA, right? And it's people you had to have been 35 or younger to qualify for DACA, and that was since June of 2012. Don't quote me on that, but it was something along those lines. So, our grandparents would not qualify for this, for the Dream Act.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know, because I feel like it was just kind of thrown out there all of a sudden, and people were like, oh, it got passed in the House, but like, what does it include? Who can get this? Who can get citizenship? So that's definitely good to know. People, please send in questions. If you have any questions about DACA or just to Rosseli in general. You also talked a bit about the Butterfly Migration Project, which we both have been working on, and I'm super excited to see what else happens with it. Was this something that you've been thinking about for quite some time, or have you been working with it along the way?
Yeah, so this was something that, like I mentioned, was I came up with last year, just with everything going on. I wanted to just really put that energy into like something more productive, rather than just like sit there and just be like really sad. So that's how it came to be. But also I know that, I want to be able to like expand the project, because DACA only, it's only a small, demographic that we're looking at. And there's still so many people that are left out from that program. So I think there's a lot of people that definitely deserve DACA. And also I think it's, like the requirements for DACA is just like being able to work and have like your GED and go to college and stuff like that. But I think like there's a lot of people that are amazing people that are not able to do that. So I think it was just like really important for this project to expand to immigrants in general.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And something popped up. I was like, do you still get questions on what DACA is? Because I get them a lot quite often. So it's just like, does it happen quite often?
Yeah, I still get lots of questions, a lot of misconceptions, lots of people, in college also, just being like, yeah, like you getting the scholarships and FAFSA. And it's like, no, I don't qualify for that. And just kind of paying my way through college. And every year, the tuitions are going up. So uh, I think my college experience, when I was going to go to college, I was like, I'm going to be involved in different like clubs and just all of this. But the reality of it was that I had to work my way through college. So I didn't technically get that college experience that I would have liked, because I was trying to pay my way through it. And there's a lot of people that, don't realize like how big that was for me as well. I do see a comment, I believe Ladine, and just kind of correct me if I'm wrong on the chat, but it was, at least from what I'm reading from the chat, is just like how Trump was trying to pass like a citizenship, right, for DACA recipients. I think that's what you're trying to ask for the question. And the thing is with Trump, he tried to end the program several times. There was conversations about like, yeah, we need to make this, Dreamers. He made a tweet. I know he tweeted a lot. There was a tweet about how we are, he wanted to find something for Dreamers, but that never happened. And he did have the power to do something, but there was nothing that was ever done. And during the administration, there was also the increase of fees that they were wanting to do. Also during that time, because I know that was my situation right now, or was at least, the work permit. So like I mentioned, it was only for 2 years, right? We get it for 2 years. So it got taken back. So now the work permit was only for 1 year. So he did cut that back. And that just meant that every year we were going to have to pay $495 for renewal. So he, in a sense, was doubling the fee as well.
A few questions have popped up, and one of them has asked, how have you dealt with ignorant remarks on immigration, especially in a predominantly conservative environment?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. Being brown in a very white state is definitely something, definitely a struggle to navigate sometimes. And I think more so before, in high school. Now what I do is just literally sometimes knowing that there's some people that are just not, they're very ignorant and not educated. So educating them. There's a lot of misconceptions, like I said, about the DACA program. So really talking and being like, hey, like, this is what you said. So like, wait a minute, let me educate you about how that's actually not true. But also knowing when to really, spend that energy, knowing when to really use that energy, because there's some people that regardless of like what you say, they won't care. They already have that in their heads of what they think about us. So knowing when to really use that energy, and also just really thinking about your own mental health, because that's at the end of the day what's more important too.
Agreed. I've gone quite a few of those as well, and it can either make you or break you. So it matters how you respond to it. One of the other questions, I don't know if you saw, but at BSU, I believe they canceled one of their main courses focused on diversity. I don't know if you were aware of that. But if you are, what advice would you have for UI instructors to raise awareness on issues related to race and diversity that be appealing to students who don't share their viewpoints?
Yeah, yes. The BSU thing is definitely something that has been very overwhelming, because especially going to BSU, when they keep canceling programs like that, it just really makes me question whether I belong in that campus or not, or whether I'm wanted in that campus or not. And for people to not stand up and advocate for that, especially legislators, because legislators have put so much pressure on BSU to end diversity programs. It really like makes me question, like, what's going on. So I think for instructors and how to navigate that is just being, I think just educating, like that education piece, but also being able to call out when you hear a student saying like very rude remarks, because I've had that happen to me, and I've had conversations with other folks when students, you know, we might be having like you know, going back to back on a specific like issue. It could be about race, it could be about whatever. Being able to really, what is it called? To facilitate the conversation. I think that's really important to really be like, hey, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And to, you know, if you know that one person might be being like really racist or something, like call them out. I don't that's that's I think that's as simple as it gets. Like, I mean, there's definitely ways to like call them out in a very professional way, but I think also acknowledging like the hurt that they're causing to the other student as well. So also just unite. Honestly, like right now with the BSU situation, it's really upsetting to see that I don't, at least personally, and that's just me on a personal level, I haven't seen any professors, anyone just rally and be like, hey, like we're standing, like we need this programs, like, and there could be some stuff going on like on the back of behind the scenes, you know, but also with students, like I don't see students like rallying or just like emailing. And like I mentioned, that could just be me not seeing it right now. But I think when you're able to unite and really show like, hey, our campus isn't about that, it really sends a strong message to people as well.
I totally agree. We have a few minutes until 6. So for our last question, I just wanted to ask, what are your plans for after college or your future goals?
Yeah, so I, like I mentioned, I'm majoring in communications and criminal justice. Um, but recently, I've really been thinking a lot about becoming, you know, changing my major to education. I really want to be a teacher. I feel like there's just, you know, maybe a high school teacher. But I think there's just so much our youth, especially like right now, I see so many youth like leading so much work, so many movements, and there's so much passion there. And sometimes you just need that like extra push to like really, um, you know, and I think there's still like ways for, you know, for teachers. I think teachers are just like so important, and we've seen that through the pandemic. So I really want to become a teacher, and I still want to be advocating for immigrant rights. I still see myself working with the ACLU, and continuing the work because the work doesn't stop.
Yes. Okay, so before turning it over to Corinne to close the program, I want to thank you, Rosseli, again for joining us and informing our community about DACA and sharing your story. You're literally such a badass, and you're inspiring, and I totally appreciate your work, so thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for also helping out with this butterfly migration project. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you both so much. Thank you, Rosseli, for being here tonight, for sharing your story and your experiences, and also for providing your insights and engaging with our questions and our students, faculty, staff, and community today. And we also did want to provide a special thank you to Monica Carrillo, our moderator, who also led the planning and organization of this week. So definitely, you know, thank you both so much for helping our campus engage in these critical conversations. Before you all head out tonight, we just have a few final announcements. Throughout this week, we will have 2 locations on campus where you can view the butterfly migration project that Rosseli has spoken about. So you can stop by the Vandal Student Lounge in the Idaho Student Union building, or you can come by our office, the Office of Multicultural Affairs. We're located in the TLC 230. And for that, you can read stories from DACA recipients, facts about the policies, statistics. And then if anyone's interested in sharing their own story or participating in the project, you can also come to the OMA office in the TLC 230 anytime throughout the week, or please feel welcome to email us at oma@uidaho.edu. And also we can kind of connect you through that avenue. We are going to be continuing DACA Awareness Week with our second keynote address on Thursday, March 25th. That's also through Zoom webinar at 5 p.m. And this webinar features Luis Cortez Romero. He's a U of I College of Law alumnus and a managing partner at Immigrant Advocacy and Litigation Center in Seattle. And Luis is going to be focusing on DACA education and advocacy within the legal system. So Again, we've got some good programs coming up. Please be sure to mark your calendars. And then I just have one tiny last announcement, which is another service we provide at the university. The University College of Law does have an immigration clinic that represents clients with different types of cases, including asylum and DACA. So third-year law students in the immigration clinic serve as the lead counsel in cases before various agencies and courts, including the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Students also lead community outreach and educational presentations throughout the region in partnership with local service providers and community organizations. Anyone interested in pursuing DACA can contact the clinic for consultation, and I will be going ahead and putting their phone number in the chat. So thank you all again. Rosseli, I don't know if you want to kind of add any last.
Yeah, I think just like one last comment I wanted to make is just for any DACA recipients or any students, you know, BIPOC community or marginalized communities, just saying that to really own the space that you're in, to really know that you belong in the space that you're in. Sometimes there's that imposter syndrome that many, and I know that I get, but knowing that you belong in those spaces is just so important. Like own it and just own that space that you're in, and know that you are in that space because of all the hard work that you're doing. So that's all I wanted to say. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Rosseli, again. And I'm so sorry. One last thing before we head out. I did see someone in the chat asking about a website, I think linking to the is there anything online linking to the Butterfly Migration Project?
So there is a website that we're working on. I think it should be up today, crossing my fingers. But if you go to ACLU of Idaho, you will see the graphic that I just showed you. It's going to be on our social medias. That way you can get involved. I also put my email there. If you have any other additional questions, you can always reach me there too.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Again, thank you all for being here and have a good night.